we've already passed over this committee. Senator Carrico, you have House Senate Bill 615. I believe Delegate Chapin had the same bill, except with I think we needed a line amendment just to clear something up. Is that correct, Frank?
Yes, the amendment would be on page 2, line 69, after the reference to section 67-203 by strike what says October 1, 2010, and every 4 years, and insert July 1, 2010, October 1, 2014, and every 4th October 1 thereafter.
Okay. All right. And have a motion as Delegate Farrell seconds. And that makes it, Frank, that makes it the same as Delegate Chapin. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Do I have a motion on the bill?
Second.
I have a motion to report in a second. Anybody in the audience wish to be heard on this same identical bill which you already passed unanimously? All right. Anybody ready to vote? Can you get Delegate Ware to get it voted? All right. Senate Bill, Clerk close roll. Senate Bill 615 passed with amendment 14-0. Thank you, Senator Carrico.
Wait.
Senator Wagner, you have two that are identical. You have
Senate Bill 517, I believe it's identical to Delegate Bill and Waivers Bill regarding bank reorganizations and bank holding companies.
banks minimum capital stock requirement, same as House Bill 1062. Right, Frank? Yes. Okay. And have a motion to report.
Second.
And a second. All those wishing to vote on this identical bill. Vote. Now, if anybody in the audience wishes to be heard, jump up and stop the train. Senate Bill 517 reports 14-0. Senator Wagner, you have another bill that's
Senate Bill 519.
519, which is identical to Senator Delegate Hugo's 949, dealing with natural gas utilities, infrastructure projects. Is it identical, Frank?
Move to report.
I have a motion to report and a second. All those wishing to vote will vote on electronic voting board. Senate Bill 519 reports 14-0. Senator Wagner, let you cool off just a minute because you're 2-0 right now. Let me get
I'm a pretty cool kind of guy, Mr.
yeah, let me get the others that are identical. Senator Stewart has patent infringement of the trolling bill, and I believe there's a substitute which will make it identical to Delegate O'Quinn's 375. Do I have a motion to move the substitute? I have a motion and a second to adopt the substitute. All those in favor of adopting the substitute say aye. Opposed? All right. You need a copy? All right, and Frank, now is this in the same language that we sent out from Delegate Carrico's bill?
It's not identical to the bill that Delegate O'Quinn had. It's the same as what the Senate did in his bill yesterday. Primarily, the difference is to deal with the language of the bill not creating a private cause of action,
Okay.
and also eliminates the severability clause as determining that to be necessary.
It wasn't necessary, okay.
And Mr. Chairman, that's where we needed it to be. There was a great deal of concern regarding the private cause of action portion of this bill. There was an amendment put on it in the Senate, which just made very clear, abundantly clear that the Attorney General would enforce this and there would be no private cause of action. And we hope that would stay in it. So I think this gets it in the form now that Delegate O'Quinn's bill and this bill are identical.
Okay.
And I think all the stakeholders agree with it.
Anybody in the audience wish to be heard for or against Senate Bill 150? All right, do I have a motion to report and a second to adopt the substitute, to pass the substitute? Members wishing to vote on electronic voting board. Clerk will close the roll. Senate Bill 150 passes 15-0. Just remember that we treated you well in here today. All right. Don't have any other. Let's see. Wait a minute. I got one more that's the same. Senator McEachin, 498 is the same as Delegate Lopez's 822, which what you have on your thing is not exactly right. It just allows you to the RPS utility use this excess sales or RECs only for 5 years. Is that right? You can't bank them but for more than 5 years. All right. That was a bill we passed out unanimously. Now the energy subcommittee. I have a second. All right. Anybody in the audience wish to be heard for or against? Members wishing to vote for electronic voting. Clerk will close the roll. Senate Bill 498 reports 17-0. Okay. We have Delegate Byron. We have Senate Bill 542, Senator Martin, which is the same as House Bill 1043, your bill on health benefit exchanges, regulation of navigators. It is identical. Anybody in the audience wish to be heard for or against the identical bill, Senate Bill 542? I do have a motion. Motion and a second. Members wishing to vote on electronic voting board. Clerk will close the roll. Senate Bill 542 reports 17-0. Senate Bill 584 is the same as Delegate Hugo 774 dealing with the regulation of competitive telephone companies. It was, I think it's the same exact language. Is that correct? Identical language, and that was Delegate Hugo's bill. Let's see here. Anybody in the audience wish to be heard for or against Senate Bill 584, identical to Hugo's 774, which passed, I believe, unanimously. I have a motion to report. I have a second. Members wishing to vote on electronic voting board. Clerk will close the roll. Senate Bill 584 reports 16-0. What was the other one? I had Senator Marsh, right? Senator Marsh on 494. It's the same as Cole. While we didn't see it in this committee, it's the same as Cole 785 on the cigarette emission propensity. The penalty just transfers it from the agriculture to the executive director of the Department of Fire program. It's the same bill. Anybody making a motion on the same bill? 785. Have a motion report in a second. Members wishing to vote on electronic voting board. Clerk close the roll. Senate Bill 494 reports 18-0. Now we get to the ones we haven't seen before. Senator Wagner, you have, and then Senator Pitt, I'm going down the ball, sign-up sheet, and Senator Pitt. Senator Wagner, you have 516. All right.
And, Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 515 provides that private employers, they may grant a preference for a veteran who has been certified as 100% totally disabled, or his spouse, understanding a lot of times this disabled veteran may not be able to work at all. This just gives an opportunity, provides an avenue, nothing mandatory in the bill, but allows for private employers, if he so chooses, to provide an employee preference for those that have, you know, given their all to us, and puts them in the same categories as a number of others that we decided is worthy of receiving that type of preference. That's all the bill does, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Habib.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question, and maybe it's a question that's also really a comment wrapped in a question. I'm absolutely support the bill. The only question I had is, as you know, Mr. Chairman, in employment cases are oftentimes federal law components to it. This protects somebody from any state law claims. I don't think it would protect them from federal law claims. I just want to make sure we're not sending a signal to people that they think that they get sort of a get out of jail and civil litigation free card. Nonetheless, I mean, it's a good bill, it's worth doing, but that's the only one little wrinkle that may need to explore some language down the road.
What kind of signal are you signaling?
I'm just trying to signal that I would hope that employers will look at these folks, or at least their spouses, and give them an opportunity. Certainly, nothing we do here supersedes federal law. Doesn't stop us from putting in a lot. Unfortunately, a lot of what we have to put in is because of federal law and the need to comply with it. So there's just an effort to make it, and who knows, maybe Washington will pick up on this good idea and include it in their hiring
Thank
preferences.
you, sir. All right. Anyone else have any questions? Anyone else have any questions? I was told that we had to finish this bill today, so does it have a,
Has no fiscal impact on the budget sheet. From the department,
well, they gave me this bill and said we needed to finish. Didn't need to send it to appropriation, but we need to finish it. Does it have a positive revenue impact?
has no impact whatsoever one way or the other.
I was given this by the clerk today, so.
Mr. Chairman,
That we had to finish it. Yes.
here's the Republican will report.
Ayes and nays. All right, have a motion to report in a second. We'll have it finished today though anyway, so whether it does or not, you know, they would tell me it needed to be on the floor tomorrow. That's all I'm saying.
Wow, looking forward, the sooner we can get this out of here, the sooner my work here is done.
All right, have a motion second. Anybody in the audience wish to be heard for or against Senate Bill 516? Members prepared to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Senate Bill 516 reports 18-0. Thank you, Senator White.
Always a pleasure.
Senator Peterson, 222.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, Senate Bill 222 deals with a statute that has seen a lot of legislation over the last 6 or 7 years. I think it was first enacted in 2008 as part of the state energy plan with the idea of encouraging more residential solar. The problem is what it did was made a distinction between projects before July 1, 2008 and projects after and how they relate to community associations. And then it had a subpart C, which is an extremely confusing set of language about when you could or could not have an HOA prohibition or restriction on solar. What we've done is just simplify this, and I talked with the community association group, and surprised for once we're actually in agreement, that basically we take out July 1, 2008 as the line of demarcation and just say there shall be no prohibitions unless the recorded declaration, which in other words would be the deeded declaration, carries such a prohibition. So,
Do you get that? I don't practice in this area.
yes, you do in closing.
You get that closing? Okay.
Yes. So
All
in
right.
other words, everyone's kind of on the same page, and I think that just simplifies the law, and that's all it is.
All right, do we have any questions on Senate Bill 222? Anybody in the audience? Any homeowners associations in the audience?
Mr. Chairman.
Wait just a second. Frank may have a.
You know what? It should be establishes.
Yeah,
And
there's
I
a-
actually have establishes in my notes.
There's a
so
typo on line 13.
Good catch. We wouldn't want it to go to the rolling like that.
And I actually have a real question
Wherever
besides
that
the
room
typo.
is. Yes.
I have a real question besides just the typo.
Okay, let's make that change. All right. Yeah, we will be changed.
Mr. Chairman, the amendment would be on line 13 after community association, strike establish and insert establishes.
Okay. Have a motion on with that. Have a motion in a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? 2-0, passes. All right, Delegate B.
Mr. Chairman, my question was, there's a bill, and I don't know what y'all did with it in the Senate today. I think it was Lemunion's bill about HOAs.
Right.
And as I understand it, what that bill is sort of giving them some powers that are outside of their
Right.
documents. One, I guess, is that bill still alive? And if it is, do we need to are these performed okay?
They are. That bill passed over my no vote, but it passed. But so that bill is different from this one. That bill, I guess it's suffice to say, that bill gives more powers to HOAs. This bill is not in conflict with that.
Okay, any other questions? Anybody else in the audience wish to be heard for or against? Have a motion to report in a second. Members prepared to vote? Clerk will close the roll. Senate Bill 222 reports you amendment 17-0. Thank you. All right. Senator Nancy.
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, we're getting a double team here.
Mr. Chairman, this is the recessive gene caucus right here, the redhead caucus.
Ain't both no redneck, tell you right now.
All right, Senate Bill 110.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senate Bill 110 is the shared work bill which came through this committee and was passed out on the floor last year. The purpose of the bill, of course, is to create a shared work program in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
What's it doing back here then if we passed it?
My favorite delegate from Bedford last year re-referred me back to this committee. So you're the only
Delegate
delegate.
Bauer?
You're the only delegate from Bedford, aren't you?
I was his favorite, yes.
You still are my favorite.
Okay.
Basically, this workshare is a type of unemployment benefit that provides employers with an alternative to layoffs in industries such as manufacturing when they're faced with temporary declines in business. Instead of laying off a portion of the workforce to cut costs, the employer may reduce the hours and wages of the employee to keep them working, or even in a group or a unit of employees. Workers with those reduced hours and wages, so long as they consent, are then eligible for a partial unemployment benefit to supplement their income. That partial unemployment benefit is up to 20%. It's a voluntary program. Now, just to give you an example, a firm, just to use this as by way of example, a firm that's facing a 20% reduction in production might lay off 1/5 of its workforce. Faced with this situation, in the voluntary workshare program, if they entered that program with the Commonwealth of Virginia, they could simply reduce the number of hours the employees that were employed by them worked from 40 to 32. That would achieve the same 20% workforce reduction. The Virginia Employment Commission could come in and subsidize part of that unemployment benefit. Of course, the employee would not make full benefit or full wages that they were making before, but it keeps them working, it keeps their benefits going, it keeps them with their retirement and their health insurance, and it also keeps that workforce trained and skilled and still on the job instead of idle and on the side. And Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, in addition to when you have a voluntary workshare program, when you have a reduced amount that VEC pays to substitute in some of that loss when they reduce the workforce hours, what we're doing, instead of having someone that's laid off and receiving those VEC benefits, they're receiving a smaller portion of those benefits, which is also a saving to the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Just go to that Commission on Unemployment Compensation. Yeah. Did they recommend it moving forward?
Mr. Chairman, my understanding is they recommended moving forward on a vote of 4-0 with one abstention.
Delegate Joanna?
Mr. Chairman, I hate to ask a question on this. I don't know the answer, but under the Affordable Care Act, isn't it true that if you have, let's say, 65 employees, so you're over the 50 limit, and you have part-time workers, isn't it true that they take all the hours of the part-time workers rather than the number of people that work for you, and then that's how you qualify for 50?
Mr. Chair, in this particular case, these employees are still counted as full-time employees for that purpose. They have to the company has to maintain the benefits, whatever benefits are provided or not provided. would continue in operation for the individuals, and it doesn't change their status as part-time compared to full-time. And so the hours are not adjusted for those types of calculations, because it's only a temporary type of adjustment. that's
Mr.
put in
Chairman,
place.
Yes.
that's not what I was looking for. The answer to, in other words, what I want to know is, are they qualified? Does the company then pay, all right, for the benefits? Is it mandatory on him to comply if he's over 50? Do you follow what I'm saying? If the
Yes,
hours-
I think I follow what you're saying, Mr. Chair, Delegate Joanna. If the company is over 50 and was having to pay the benefits before implementing this program, as long as they haven't terminated other employees, they would continue to have to do so. So it would not affect that status.
Delegate Farrell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Stanley or Senator Parker, I just want to make sure I understand this in layman's terms. So basically, this is an agreement that a company can enter into with, sounds like the workers, with the Unemployment Commission, and say, hey, look, we got to reduce some people's hours.
Or layoffs or
Can we let them, we'll tap into the unemployment they're eligible for if they were unemployed. Instead, we'll do that instead of just laying them off. They get some of the money and we still pay them part of it. Is that basically what you're doing in layman's terms?
Mr. Chairman and Delegate Farrell, that is exactly what we're doing. And that way you're keeping the workforce working, you're keeping the reduction that has to happen because of a downturn in the economy or downturn in production, without laying people off fully and putting them on full VEC benefits, which would be, a much larger number to the state. You're putting on a reduced amount and keeping them working, keeping them employed, keeping them insured, keeping their benefits. And in the end, the participating company pays back the amounts that were used in the trust fund to pay that difference.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of follow-ups, that's all right. And it was a 32-hour, if you go from 40 to 32, is that what you said?
Mr. Chairman and Delegate Farrell, what I was doing was using it by way of an example of where you'd have perhaps a 20% reduction in workforce.
Yeah.
Instead of reducing 20% of the employees, you reduce 20% workforce staff hours. And in that way, they're still working. They're working a 32-hour work week rather than where you could do it in 4 days.
Is there a limit? I mean, is it, if they fall below 20 hours and they're not, I mean, is there a threshold or a ceiling or of where this would kick in and where it would not?
Mr. Chairman, they can have half a 50% reduction. So there's it's fairly wide latitude in these situations. It's commonly used in situations where there's a downturn in the economy or a temporary reduction in demand orders for your particular product, but they expect it to return. And one of the advantages the employers see constantly is that this way they get to keep their workers that they appreciate having. They like these workers. These are workers they've trained. They don't have to go out and when the economy comes back, go out and hire a new person and train them all over again. So they get to keep the workers, and it's often you have sort of a family situation in the company that
Mr. Chairman, just
feeds into that as well.
one more quick question. Are there?
That was two.
Well, I just get one. Thank you. Is there any other states that do this?
Mr. Chairman, if I may answer that, there are 20 states that do this. I can give you the list. I'm sorry, it's now up to 28 states, including Florida, Texas, Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, Minnesota, Arizona, California, Washington State, and one of the largest companies that pushed this program was, in fact, the Motorola Corp.
Delegate Marshall?
Is someone from the commission here that I could ask a question?
From the
Unemployment Commission? Yeah.
yes. Tell us your name, please.
Jason Pad, Virginia. Back in my previous life, before I came here, our business used something called partial unemployment through the commission. All right, so what is partial unemployment still available, and what's the difference between partial unemployment and Senate Bill 110?
Partial UI is still available. The difference is that the short-time compensation expands partial UI. Under partial UI, if your benefits, say your reduction is not more than what you would be paid in UI benefits, then you're paid zero benefits. So for example, if your weekly wage was $300, under partial UI, you would currently get zero. If it's $300 under short time, your benefit payment would be $56. So it's an expansion.
All right, Delegate Byron?
I have a question for you too. Trying to understand how all this comes together, and you know, the fiscal impact apparently, Senator said is way off kilter because it's got, you know, an impact of $1.8 million in the unemployment taxes in the future, and $1.9 million in the unemployment trust fund. Are those figures relative to what you see the impact could be?
I mean, the fiscal impact that we had was 19% per employee tax increase over an 8-year period. Would be 19 cents.
19 cents?
Yes, per employee.
Not 19%?
No.
Okay.
No, the amount, right, the amount of employers that we have seen participate in this in other states is very, very low compared to the general benefits that are paid out. The short time program is 1/3% of total payouts. For other states that we've seen is the median. Usually a very small amount of employers that participate.
So the states that you're seeing utilize this, a lot of the states that have adopted it aren't necessarily utilizing it. Is that what you're saying?
It's hard to say if they are utilizing it or not. It's hard to make a comparison. I mean, we do have numbers of the total benefits that are paid out. How many people are participating in this short-time compensation? Out of all the states that participate, none are over 1%.
Mr. Chairman.
So, may I continue for just a minute? So I'm still trying to understand this, because going back, like Doug Marshall was talking about, back in my days of business and days when I actually was an employee of a business, the unemployment trust fund unemployment was a benefit, more or less, from businesses that they invest into. So when they had short-term reductions in their workload, that those employees would hopefully be compensated, and they really kind of expected them to come back to work. That's how it worked years ago. Now most people get laid off and they don't go back to work. In most cases, they're done and they're getting a compensation, almost like a severance package. So the whole unemployment benefit has kind of changed its policy direction in the first place. And now it seems we're taking it a step further by making it more of a, even though it's voluntary, we're making it more compensation, where if they really have slowed down that much, you would think that they didn't need the workers. So now they're trying to spread out this over their whole factory or whatever, and make the wages work so that people don't have to go. It's just getting complicated. And then the employee can also reject it. From what I've read in there, the employees can reject the plan under some kind of cause. And the unemployment compensation, or the VEC has to make the decision on all of these things regarding the plan and the concept and appeals and all of those things. Do you anticipate that being a problem?
It's, we don't have any experience, or we haven't had any communication with other states in what they involve in that. So.
Okay.
Okay, Joanna.
Don't leave, just very quickly.
And just before you, and those who are in favor of the bill, if you could come over here so I can get to you here in just a minute.
Very quickly, if you can just say, I think the ACE, the Medicaid situation that we're under right now, if you're a part-time employee, I think it's 30 hours, below 30. So if you're below 30 hours, you're counted as a full employee. It's also my understanding that in the case itself, if you've got 30 employees, they average all those hours with the employees that you have in order to come up for the number. Have you looked at the Medicaid Act to see whether or not, what complications it has, and what results might, did you look at the ACR?
Mr. Chair, Delegate, no, sir, we have not. What we understand is that through this legislation that all health those requirements under the Affordable Care Act, just because your hours are reduced, they are not allowed to take away benefits. I believe it's stated in the bill.
But that doesn't answer the question. You're counting these people as part-time employees, is that correct?
The employer would be.
All right.
The employer would still be counting them as full-time.
And further question, Mr. Chairman, have y'all looked at the Affordable Care Act to see how that affects whether we pay extra money or not, and whether or not that company has to carry insurance or not on those individuals?
Mr. Chair, Delegate, no, sir. I mean, we have not.
Mr. Chair? Yes. Would you like me to respond on that? We have looked into this issue because it was raised throughout the review process with the Unemployment Compensation Commission and everything. The Affordable Care Act would apply in the situation as if they were still a full-time employee. So when their hours are reduced temporarily, it does not change their status as it relates to those types of things.
Okay.
So it would not have any implications whatsoever for them.
Okay. Delegate James.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask the patient, I think they put a little bit of a different spin on this. In the other states that this has been used, am I incorrect in believing that I've heard some of my peers say it's actually acted as a very strong business retention tool? Because in today's volatile economy, a company is forced to make a decision. With this, they can reduce their employees, but they can keep them on, and more importantly, they can have the benefits. So when the economy does ramp back up, and I think some of the other states will also use this, they have used it competitively as a competitive disadvantage in their programs that they have. So I think this bill would actually help from an economic development standpoint. It gives us another tool in the toolkit for those employers who are faced with this decision. Is that?
I would agree with that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Delegate James, that's exactly right, because a lot of these states are using this to attract businesses, knowing that, and there's advanced manufacturing, the new manufacturing that's coming in, knowing that if there is an economic downturn, that there are tools that are available between the government and private industry, which can keep that industry moving, keep the people working, and even psychologically, as Delegate Marshall and I know, to have companies come in and then let and get the good feeling of our neighborhoods and our neighbors about working again, and then all of a sudden layoffs occur. Psychologically, it's not a very good thing. It keeps that worker even engaged in the economy and the local levels, and you're still going to the mom and pop stores and still spending money and still saving money.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just to follow up on that while we're on it, my good friend here, Senator, could you please tell me who is paying for this? I mean, I realize that the economy has been pretty trashy the last 3 years, and maybe that's why we're having such struggles, but who is paying for it? I don't understand that. If the business is doing it because they, help me to understand it so I can support it. So if the businesses are paying for it because they're in a downturn, who eventually pays for it? Somebody's got to pay for it.
Mr. Chair, Delegate Byron, the businesses in the end are the ones who pay for this. And what you have is a situation where Virginia, as from serving on these issues, working on these issues for a number of years, we're an experience-rated system. And so in essence, what ends up happening is the businesses that utilize this program, they over time pay back the costs that were incurred or paid out to their employees, just like they do if they were to lay off employees. What's calculated in the fiscal impact statement is that the projection is that there would be, on average, about a 19 cents per employee per year total increase. Most of that is because of the expectation that this will be used a little bit more than just the layoff situation. Of that 19 cents, over 90% of that would be paid by the employers who are using the program. And so the cost to the businesses that are not using this program would be less than 2 cents per employee per year. So less than 2 pennies per year per employee. So the cost would be borne by the employers who would use the program.
All right, Delegate Habib.
Mr. Chairman, I had a couple questions. And I also have one comment, and I know this has been through, and Senator Barker knows this better than me. I actually, my understanding of the way the federal government would look at this, it wouldn't matter what you call full-time, part-time employees. They just look at the number of hours worked times the number of employees and determine how many full-time employees you have. Now, I don't know that it's relevant because you're having to keep the benefits in place, so they're probably not going to become unbenefited full-time equivalent employees. But that might be a little bit different on what you said. But my two questions are, if I'm reading this right, any plan seeking approval can be no more than 12 months in length, and no modification can extend that 12 months. Although you can modify other parts of it, you can't extend it by modification. Is there a prohibition about reapplying for a new plan when your first year expires? I don't see one, and I'm not asking you some kind of trick. I just want to make sure I'm not missing it.
Mr. Chair, I'm not 100% certain of the answer to that question. I do have someone here who worked on the plan at the federal levels, retired federal employees familiar with it. Maybe he can answer that particular question.
You could come forward and answer that question. I know Senator Locke wants us to move on.
Yes, my name is David. There would be, under this bill and under federal requirements, there would be no prohibition. It would be a new plan, and it would be evaluated as a new plan.
Okay, and that's what I thought. And then my second question, on the Senate side, did y'all do an evaluation about how this might affect collectively bargained rights as opposed to, I mean, as I read the bill, for most of us who are not in a collectively bargained world, it's pretty clear how it would affect benefits and all of that. But how a plan would interplay with the collectively bargained environment?
Mr. Chairman, it would be, what we have is a situation whereby the requirement is that they maintain the benefits for the employees during this 12-month, up to 12-month period that they would be operating, so it would not affect that. And the collective bargaining unit would be involved in the decision as to whether or not to go forward, and it does require acquiescence or agreement of the employees.
Fine.
Mr. Chairman, just a question. So I think this has already been addressed. I'm just looking at the fiscal impact that's coming from the unemployment trust fund that is going to have to be paid for by the businesses that pay into the trust fund. Correct. It's been mentioned that this is somehow designed to help businesses or attract businesses, and I see some representatives of the business community in the audience who might like to speak to in favor of it. But I also am wondering about those businesses that are not necessarily successful, that are caught in an economic downturn, but those businesses that are not being run efficiently and that are not being run competitively and that are, in essence, going to be propped up by this system and receive a subsidy in a way to continue to operate at reduced levels instead of a competitive economic environment operating, and that's what Virginia is known for. How does this help Virginia's reputation as a competitive environment for business, as a good environment for business when we're propping up businesses that would otherwise not continue?
Mr. Chair, David Klein, I don't think it's propping up business at all. None of the money goes to the businesses. The money goes to the employees, so it does not prop up businesses. From the business standpoint, it's no different than if you laid off your 20% of your employees instead of reducing the hours by 20%. The benefit to the business is that long term you still have those employees, and presuming your business revenues come back up, you then don't have to go out and hire new people, train new people, do those types of things. You have a core workforce that is loyal to you and that will be productive. And I think what you find is that the states that have gone into this program, the businesses end up being the strongest proponents of it, because they see the advantage of it and the benefits of it. No, sir, they're not receiving any subsidy. Because the payments do not go, no payments go to the business, so the business is not receiving any subsidy. It's only to their employees.
Let's get a running debate here. Okay. Let's hear those in favor of the bill real quick, and then I know I got a few other questions. Yes.
Chairman Ryan Dunn, Virginia Chamber of Commerce. We support this bill. We think it is more of a tool that can be used for retention. And again, we have talked to some employers who have this in their state. They do find it useful and have used it multiple times, and especially in the federal contracting world, where they might be waiting for the contracts to come
The other one finished. They're in between contracts waiting on the government to act, and this is a way for them to keep their trained workforce. We do feel like usually aren't standing in front of you talking about raising the UI. We aren't doing that this time because we feel like those who use the program are the ones who actually are paying for the program, with only a small bit attributed to the administrative cost that is associated with it.
Delegate McClellan.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate sort of one question. This program, which is optional, is a way that rather than the employer laying the employees off, at which point both of them would get unemployment compensation, they can, in a sense, job share, and then they only get partial compensation. So overall, you're saving money.
That's right. And at the same time, the employer is choosing to still give that person benefits all the time that this is going on. Again, saving them on that end as well. So,
all right, Delegate O'Quinn, way down there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I saw in here the budget impact, 1.3 in the first year and 1.4 in the second. Am I correct that that doesn't need necessarily to be in the budget? It comes from the
unemployment
correct
employers,
so
the trust fund.
Correct. So then that brings me to my second question. What is the balance in the unemployment trust fund right now?
I think we've probably got somebody here that can answer that.
It's about
106 million, 160 million. Is that pretty solvent right now? Because you know that ebbs and flows.
our solvency level last year was about 24%.
Delegate Klein, you're back up again.
Well, just I'm trying to. Well, I was going to ask the chamber a couple of questions, but I understand that the chamber supports the idea of their businesses being able to take advantage of a new program where their employees would receive reduced hours and some state money through the unemployment fund. Well, paid for by them, but do your employers understand that they would be paying for this by increased unemployment costs in the out years?
The users would be paying, there's about 2 cents, they think, extra per employee across the board that will be paid for those that don't use it. But again, those who opt to use this program will be the ones paying for it. And we look at it as they have to make the decision between one person losing